All right. Thank you so much again, everybody, for listening to Stop Interviewing, Start Selling. I'm your host, Philip Meyer, and today we have an extremely special guest, as I turn my microphone there, Mrs. now, Julia Dekker. So thank you so much for coming on board. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Congratulations, by the way, on the Dekker part.
Thank you. Yes, I'm officially with the Dutch last name now that I have to correct everybody in spelling.
Yeah. So hopefully I said that right, though. Is it Dekker?
It is Dekker. It sounds like it should have a C in there, but it doesn't. Just an extra K.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's funny. My last name's not that hard to say. It's Meyer, but every time I get a telemarketer or a phone call, it's always Mayor. I'm like, no, this isn't City Hall. You reached the wrong place. So
Wouldn't have thought that one.
absolutely. So for those of you who don't know Julia, and because most of the time this podcast is showing up on LinkedIn, I'm sure you have a lot of connections on LinkedIn from having been not just a sales representative yourself, but also having been a sales trainer. So I met Julia because when I was brand new into the outside sales world of UniFirst, Julia was one of my sales trainers. And I've always just thought you were amazing. The way that you would train people was fantastic. And so I'm super honored to have you on the show. So thank you again for jumping on board. Tell me
It's a pleasure.
about yourself, Julia, for people that may not know you.
Well, my name is Julia Dekker, and I'm a senior business partner for sales leadership training with Johnson Controls now, which obviously I met you, Phil, at UniFirst Corporation back when I was training there, but also had started out as a salesperson at the organization. Now I work predominantly with sales managers and area sales leaders at the current company that I work with. Where we provide customers with a full range of systems and digital solutions to make buildings smarter and safer and more efficient, ultimately sustainable, but still working with buildings, which obviously you know buildings pretty well working for UniFirst.
Yes, absolutely. So how did you get started in sales, by the way?
So actually, my first full-time sales role was right out of college with UniFirst. But prior to that, my first real sales experience was actually with Northwestern Mutual Financial Network as a college financial representative when I was a freshman in college.
Wow. So what does a financial college representative do exactly?
So we went through the majority of the training that a normal financial representative would have with Northwestern Mutual. And I actually had my insurance license. So I attended a week-long class and got my insurance license when I was a freshman in college to sell life insurance and disability income insurance. So it was a lighter schedule. Obviously, I was part-time being still in school, but it was a really interesting experience, especially at such a young age.
Yeah. Was it difficult in the beginning to go from being a student into the sales world? And what was that transition like for you?
Well, I was working for Northwestern Mutual in 2008 and 2009, so right in the midst of the financial crisis. So to say it was difficult is an understatement, particularly as a college freshman, cold calling on people who were in a lot of cases 2 to 3 times my age. It was very, very difficult to be taken seriously. And though I loved the company, because I still to this day think that they had such a wonderful training program as well, I can't say I was extremely passionate about life insurance. I think looking back, I tend to prefer a more tangible product than talking about what happens when you pass away and what you leave behind. It's not the
Right.
most fun conversation to have. But
Yeah.
it was definitely difficult.
See, that's interesting because my first real outside sales gig was Aflac. And at the time, it was right around that same time actually that I was uh, prospecting and trying to sell insurance policies, or really it's really gap insurance. Uh,
Hmm.
but life insurance was one of those things that I used to sell. So two things. So just building on what you said, to sell during that economic crisis was a challenge, uh, especially because I mean that was right around the same time that Obamacare came out, and people were going, "Does this fulfill my requirement for this?" And I'm like, "Nope, it's completely supplemental." And they're like, "Yeah, we're not interested, right?" But then when I talk about life insurance, the one thing I always had to say to people was listen, I'm going to give you a startling stat. One out of every one person will die. And I would just stop talking, and that was my whole sales pitch for life insurance. Um, but yeah, so your first sales gig is obviously a very challenging one, and I'm sure that you know as well as I, sales has a lot of turnover, and a lot of the time it's because it becomes more difficult than people think it's going to be. So I'm wondering what was it that kept you engaged? What was it that kept you within the industry?
You know, despite how difficult that first experience was in sales, I loved the sales process. Northwestern Mutual, even though I know I said I'm not an insurance salesperson at heart, their training program was absolutely phenomenal. And it was the first exposure I'd really had to role playing, for instance. And yes, I am the total weirdo that loves a good sales role play. Probably good that I'm in the field that I'm in now.
I believe that.
But I loved the psychology and the problem solving that went into sales. And I knew, even though that experience was really tough, I knew that when I graduated from college, that's what I wanted to do. I didn't know what type of sales I wanted to be in at that point, but I knew I wanted to be in sales.
Right. So when you mentioned role playing, for a lot of people out there that don't understand what that is, can you explain what just briefly what a roll call or like role playing is for sales?
Yeah, so it's any situation, any sales situation that a seller might get into in the real world, and you take that and you put it into a more clinical experience where they get to play out that scenario, or how it could potentially go in a safe environment. So it's skill drill for the real world. And it's a great way to prepare anybody for an actual sales call, and to get you thinking about what might happen and how you might respond to that situation. And it's one of my favorite things to do, obviously.
Yeah. So I laugh when you say the safe environment thing because technically that is correct. But in my case, my first sales manager with UniFirst by the name of Jason Guyer, shout out to Jason if you're listening. Uh, it was not safe. Like he was,
Jason.
yeah, he was extremely strict. But I took so many lessons away from that role play, like you're saying, because he really made it more difficult than it actually was in the field, and there was a reason behind his madness, right? So just to give an
Well,
example,
there's definitely that balance, right? Of you want
yes,
it to be difficult to test the seller's skills, but you don't want it to be so difficult that they can't win.
yeah, yeah,
That makes
exactly,
sense.
yeah. One of my favorite things that he would do is I would ask him one of the most important questions in the laundry business, and that is, when your employees turn in all five shirts, all five pairs of pants each week, do you always get them all back the following week? And of course, every rep in the world is going to expect you to go, no, they don't. They short me all the time. They're terrible. Jason would just go, yep. And he'd just stare at you. Like
And of
he
course, because
would,
that is usually the number one problem that nobody ever says yes or
yeah,
to. So
yeah, exactly. But to Jason's credit, I mean, for him to train me that way, I think was important. But you hit on another really important topic that I wanted to talk about as well, and that was You mentioned the sales training at your previous employment was really good, right? And
Hmm.
as a person that has been poached in the past, and I actually left Universe for a different company. I won't mention the name of. You can look at it on LinkedIn if you go to my LinkedIn page. But that was one of the key differences, and one of the key reasons I came back is because of sales training. And you and your team had a lot to do with that, honestly, uh, because not all
Love
sales
hearing
training teams are created,
that.
right? So, but not all sales trainers are created equal. Some of them just don't know how to do it, or some companies are like, like my favorite thing is they go, we teach big boy sales here. We don't teach, kindergarten. I'm going to hold your hand. I'm going to teach you how to do this. So just memorize all this stuff and you're good to go. Go for it, kid. And then that's it, right? uh, but yeah, so it was really really enlightening to see that. So kind of already asked this question before, but when you were in college, what did you study? What did you want to do before your sales career?
That's a really interesting question.
Oh, good.
Well, I should say interesting answer. I was actually an art history major with a minor in business. And my initial idea when I started in school was that I wanted to go into art sales. I wanted to be an art dealer. So I knew I wanted to sell. I had a totally different product in mind, though, in my early days. So throughout college, I obviously did a mix of business and I did sales internships. However, I also had internships at art galleries and with the Columbus College of Art and Design, and was kind of in this whole other world at the same time. I ended up realizing that I didn't actually end up wanting to sell art. Um, it was a field that would have taken a further degree on top of it. And I was really ready to get out there and start making money and start selling. So I still love to this day history and art history. In fact, my husband is a history teacher, and
Oh,
we're
wow.
actually in a few days going to Gettysburg to check that out and fulfill one of his bucket list items. So,
Oh, that's awesome. My my dad is really into Gettysburg, and he actually wrote a article and got published in like a Civil War magazine. I had no idea there was even such a thing, but apparently there is. So he's kind of a big deal within that realm. So if he has questions, I'm happy to pass it on to my dad. My dad can answer questions about the Civil War.
hey, you'll have to send me some good tips of things to check out when we're there.
For sure, absolutely. I don't know personally. I'm not into that stuff, but so you went from being a sales rep, you transferred over to UniFirst. Was that kind of a different role than what you were used to?
At UniFirst,
Hmm.
well, so UniFirst was really my first experience full time in sales. So it was my first real full time, intense job too, where I wasn't also a student at the same time. And I think every college student has that moment when they start their first real job, where it can be a little bit of a rude awakening. Um, but I loved it. I loved the rush of winning a deal. I really devoted, especially that first year, 100% to just learning and being a sponge. And it obviously paid off in a lot of ways. But it was a great first sales experience in a full-time role. I think part of that also being, to your point, the sales training program that UniFirst had.
Yeah. So let's talk about that because obviously, as a rep, I mean, like you're right. It's definitely a rush to win a deal. That's the reason I do it. Plus the accolades, the opportunity to go to President's Club and get the much sought after diamond ring, and walk around with that, but like, check it out, y'all. I'm amazing.
Oh, I can't lift my hand.
Yeah. Yeah.
So heavy.
Yeah, definitely. But so what was it that made you want to transition from being a rep and enjoying all that, enjoying chasing accounts and competing for accounts to wanting to teach others and pass that knowledge along?
I had two really great experiences with sales training programs. First, obviously, at Northwestern Mutual, and then later at UniFirst. And as I started gaining more experience, I began helping other new sales team members as they came on board. And through that experience, I realized pretty organically how much I really loved sharing what I knew with others and seeing someone have that sort of aha moment. And I've also, I've been very passionate about learning new things ever since I was a kid. I probably have that a little bit ingrained in me, having both parents started off as educators. But I also ended up actually attending UniFirst Advanced Value Selling Program at their corporate headquarters when I was a sales rep, which obviously that's how we initially met as well, Phil. And I knew when I went that I wanted to become part of that team one day. And to my great surprise, one day ended up being about 6 to 7 months after that. But I knew that's where I saw myself after I had that interaction at the corporate office.
Yeah. And that's such a great class too. I mean, I just went back just after I came to Idaho and started working directly under Chris Baker. By the way, if I go any further in this podcast without telling you that Chris Baker says hello and he misses you, he will write me up tomorrow.
Tell him I said hi.
I will, definitely. He was super excited when he found out I was going to be having you on the show. He's like, "You got Julia to come on your show?" I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "But you're a loser." So
ouch, Chris. Ouch.
Yeah. So, but that class was amazing because the interaction that you're given to talk to not just reps that are starting out, maybe have a lower average than you, but also to get to talk to people that actually have gone to President's Club or maybe in the Hall of Fame. To me, that's extremely valuable to have that interaction. That's why I say again that sales training is not created equal. I've never been to another sales training with any company that would allow you to do something like that and have that interaction with everybody. So, but I've also been told by various sales managers within the company and also outside, and also sales trainers, that the laundry industry as a whole, one of the reasons that people get poached from it is because it's just a prime training ground for new sales reps. In fact, let's see. In fact, it's even been called the college of sales, quote unquote. And I'm wondering, from a sales trainer having been with the industry and now being outside the industry, do you find that that's the case? Do you find that that's a true statement?
I would definitely say that the laundry industry is one of a handful of really great places to start a sales career. It's one of the few that you don't need a lot of prior experience to get started in. And the companies that make up the industry are also really well known for producing strong salespeople. So even if uniform sales isn't your end goal, a couple of years of solid performance tends to open up a world of options. And I'd say that it's one of like I said, a handful of great places you probably could start a career, but it has that niche that, like I said, you can get in without a long resume, and the training is intense, and the sales are intense. You're facing a lot of rejection, you're knocking on a lot of doors, and that helps to build a really strong salesperson.
Yeah, definitely. That's always been my impression of it too. And in fact, I know, like I just had a recent conversation just in the past 6 months or so with a recruiter from a medical sales company. And historically, medical sales has been one of the most sought after industries by salespeople because there's the opportunity to make a lot of money in it, right? In fact, one of my sisters I think she still is a medical sales rep with a different company, but she was a medical sales rep in Santa Barbara, California. And she was amazing. And so it was kind of cool to find that out. But one of the things that they had told me, because I don't have a bachelor's degree, like a 4-year, I have a little piece of paper that says you graduated high school, congratulations, and that's about it. and also a best dad period shirt, but that's pretty much the extent of my qualifications. um, but I bring that up because what this recruiter was telling me is that things are evolving now. And it seems like from what she was telling me is that laundry industries, other industries specifically are being targeted by medical sales, regardless of whether or not you have a degree or not. And I just thought that was super interesting. And honestly, I think she found me because I have a pretty active presence on LinkedIn, like posting on my trophies and awards and accolades and putting together really funny videos or whatever. And then people see you that way. But anyways, I digress. So my next question for you was, as a sales trainer that has dealt with not just rookie sales reps, brand new sales reps, people that have never had any sales experience, but also dealing with veteran sales reps, either from outside the industry or from within your own company, what do you see is the biggest challenge to sales reps as far as them being able to sell, being able to promote, or just do well overall?
I think I would say the biggest challenge salespeople face is really fear of change. Change is every salesperson's true competitor, essentially. Whether you're going head to head against an actual competitor in your industry for a deal, or competing for capital amongst other projects, or just battling the status quo of doing nothing at all, it all leads back to change and getting somebody to do something different than what they're currently doing. And that's really tough. As human beings, we're really averse to change naturally. And that's the thing that salespeople have to get somebody to do every day.
Yeah. I never looked at it that way. That's actually a really good point, is that is what we make people do every day, is they change either the way that they do business or they change how they look at it.
Y'all are change champions.
Yeah. I'm going to put that on my LinkedIn profile now. Change champion. It's going to be there. No, it's funny you mentioned change because like that's how I feel too. Like I don't like change necessarily. Like it seems like a weird thing, but the last time you probably saw me, my hair was different. I had spikes. It was like a faux hawk, right? And I've had that ever since.
It was. I remember that.
Yeah. See, it's very memorable. I looked so good. But then I reached the 11-year mark in my marriage. My wife's like, yeah, I don't want to be married to a 12-year-old anymore. So we're going to change this up a little bit. And then really, I blame Ryan Gosling because that's how his hair was in, was it Crazy
Don't we
Stupid
all?
Love? Yeah. Dang him. But it's so much harder to keep. Anyways, I'm getting sidetracked again. So to your point, yes, change is very difficult. I agree with you on that. But with that too, like I would imagine, because I've like being a veteran rep, I've dealt with rookie sales reps and tried to train them, kind of take them under my wing and show them what I do every day, tell them that sales, contrary to popular belief, is not a 9-to-5 job. I mean, sometimes I'm up at 5:30 and I'm sending out emails to my Big 10 accounts. I'm prospecting that way, and then go to Starbucks, and then I'll go out there and hit the field.
Starbucks essential.
Right? Exactly. You have to have it. But then from there, like I'll prospect the entire day and conduct appointments and presentations and go for closes or go size people or go do installs. And then after that, it's still like, well, I still have to get 10 more doors in. So I'll go until 7 o'clock, right? Because that's what people have to do. You have to have quality, but you have to have quantity too. So I've heard my fair share of excuses as to why people don't do well in sales, why they didn't really accomplish what they were hoping to. What kind of excuses do you hear the most being a sales trainer?
Ooh, I think the one I hear most often is it's different in blank. Insert city, state, country here. And, though markets can be different,
Sure.
I usually find that is not what is holding somebody back.
Yep. I would agree on that too. I've heard, because I talked to the legendary Bill Wise, who was nice enough to actually, he's fantastic. I was surprised at how approachable Bill really is. I mean, this guy,
he is totally down to earth.
Yeah, I mean, like he's a Hall of Famer with the company. I mean, he's obviously been with us a long time. He dabbled in national accounts. He was a major account rep. He was a sales manager. So he's kind of done all the avenues of it. And it's funny because people look at him and they go, I've heard people say, "Oh, he's been in his territory for 20 plus years. Of course, he's going to go to President's Club 19 times." I was like, well, that may work for a year, but how do you explain the other 18? I mean, you
Yeah.
gotta put the work in. Just because you're in Texas doesn't mean people are gonna walk up to you and be like, "Let's sign up." Like I wish they
Yeah, and
would,
Bill
but
has put the work in.
of course, definitely. Like I think you're right. Like I think prospecting is the biggest thing. I just read a book. What's it called? Uh, Anyways, there's a book on prospecting. I'll post a link to it. It was written by Jeb Blunt, who was actually a former Aramark rep. So he was in
Mm-hmm.
my industry. And some of the stuff that he puts, like he's speaking my language. Like I hear this whole thing about, oh, well, it's really quality over quantity, right? Like I only hit 10 days that day because I wanted to hit quality doors. I'm like, do you have a crystal ball? Like, can you tell which ones are the quality? Because I can't. Like I have to go out and hit like 20, 30 doors a day in order to find the ones that are quality, right? So yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. Um, By the way, if you see me looking down or looking to the side, it's not because I'm checking my text message. I wrote all the questions I was going to ask you, and it keeps locking. So I was like, I really hope she doesn't think I'm like, oh, nothing much,
Face
just
print, face
podcasting.
print.
um, so number 9, and this is a question that I was thinking about myself when I asked this, but I wanted to hear it from you. Uh, let's say you have kids, right? Would you encourage them, or if they were to come to you one day and say, "Mom, I think I'm going to go into sales. I think I'm going to make it my full-time career, and this is what I see myself doing the rest of my life." Would you encourage that, or would you turn them away from it?
Well, I think we definitely have a conversation about how tough it's going to be, but it would definitely also be something that I would encourage. I really don't see the role of salespeople being, replaced by technology. So the job market is extremely strong. It's a great place to make a career. And even if it's not something that you end up making a career out of, the education and the experience that you gain in sales can serve you so well in almost any other field that you'd go into. You know, being able to handle rejection, the ability to influence others, being able to overcome obstacles, being an active listener, problem solving. The list
Mm-hmm.
just goes on of all the really marketable things you learn.
Yeah. Hence the whole reason I started this podcast, right? Stop interviewing, start selling. Because I mean, even if you're not in sales, you want a job. Like if you learn how to cold call, you learn the law of averages and the law of numbers, and you learn about your stats going out and how many people you talk to. If you learn about bypassing the gatekeeper and how to get around them, how to get to the hiring manager, the actual decision maker, you're going to have a leg up on your competition. It's just plain and simple, right? It's almost like if you're to say, okay, this guy and this guy, I'm going to put you in a cage and you're going to fight, but none of you have any training. If this dude has trained in martial arts his entire life, this guy maybe just played piano. He may be tough, but he's going to get his ass kicked, right? That's how sorry, I have a Taekwondo background, so I always bring in a fighting analogy somewhere. Um,
I love a good analogy.
Yeah, I do too. I feel like sales reps have like we come up with really good ones from time to time, especially Chris Baker.
Kevin Ludlow, if you remember,
I do. Yeah, I love
is a
Kevin.
phenomenal. I don't know if there's a word for that. Creator of analogies.
We'll just call it a
There's
Ludlow.
some good
That's what we'll
ones.
do. From
It's a
now
Ludlow.
on,
Oh,
we
he's
open the
gonna love
dictionary.
that.
We go to the letter L. It says Ludlow. That means creator of analogies.
You'll have to give him a special tag in this.
Definitely. I definitely will. Um, yeah, my daughter, she's 7 now, and she's had a bike since she was like 3, but it's way too small for her. And she came up to me one day because all of her friends have bigger bikes. You know, they're 10, 11 years old, whatever. And she goes, Daddy, I really want a bike. And I was like, is it your birthday? And she's like, no. I was like, is it Christmas? And she's like, no. I said, okay, well then you're going to learn about earning a bike. Okay. So I taught her, if you do jobs around the house, ask me for how much I'll pay you and I'll give you a number and then we'll negotiate. Right. So she goes, okay. So first day she fixes one of my son's toys or whatever. And she goes, Dad, what do you think I should get paid for this? I was like, I'll pay you $5. And she goes, okay. And I went, no. Hold on. Sit down. I was like, why would you only accept $5? A bike costs $80. At this rate, it's going to take you 6 months. You might as well just wait for Christmas and I'll buy you a bike. Right? So she goes, well, could I ask for more? I said, yes. She goes, and you'll give it to me? I was like, no. That's the whole point of negotiating, is that we start off this way. So the next time she did like the dishes or something, I was like, all right, how much do you want? And she goes, I want $10. I was like, no, I'll give you $5. And she goes, okay. And I was like, no, you're leaving money on the table. So we've had this whole conversation. She's so good at it.
I love this.
Yeah, she's so good at it. My wife hates it. But
oh yeah, you're creating a monster.
Oh yeah, definitely. But she's fantastic at it now. She knows, okay, well, there's a little bit of wiggle room, so I'll start high and I'll come in lower. I'll negotiate this way. So, anyways, yeah, I think I'd have that same conversation with my kids that you would with yours, and like talk about the grind and how tough it is. In fact, my niece actually interviewed in Sacramento for sales rep with UniFirst. And we had lunch afterwards. She was younger at the time. We had lunch afterwards. I said, so what'd you think? And she goes, I think this is too serious of a job for me right now. And I was like, really? She's like, yeah. I was like, it takes a mature person to recognize that, because most people are attracted to the freedom, the money, the commission, and they get lost in the glitz and glamour of being good at it. But
they don't see the quota.
Yes, exactly. Definitely. So, and we kind of already talked about this, but just to dive a little bit deeper into this, how has learning overcoming objections, closing techniques, sales techniques, prospecting techniques, and then also learning how to teach that back to somebody, how do you think that has positively influenced your career and your career path from here on out?
You know, there's so many components of sales that just, you know, can really launch your career forward. I think I would say that one of the things that sales specifically has taught me that is really applicable to advancing in most large companies is running effective meetings, you know, having an agenda, not going down a rabbit hole that you can't solve for, bringing things to a conclusion with actionable next steps. In sales, it's usually about moving the customer to the next stage of our sales cycle. But those same skills, everyone appreciates, because having effective meetings gets things done. And you want to be the person that everybody knows gets things done. I'd also say that, you know, my sales career has made me a strong listener and an influencer, and being able to influence without actual authority is a skill that can help you accelerate your career massively. And I'd also add that the presentation skills that come along with a sales role, the ability to speak effectively in front of a large group of people is not an easy skill by any means. I think most people actually rate that as being one of their fears, is public speaking. And to be able to do that just can really launch your career forward as well, being able to command a room.
Yeah. As a person who grew up stuttering basically, and then never really thinking I would get out of that, to I mean, my dad tells me, he's like, to see you be in a profession where you're literally sitting down in front of a CEO or in front of a business owner or in front of a group of people and presenting on why your company is better than the incumbent or than the competitor. I mean, it's amazing to see that, right? And I really do feel like role playing, all the skills in sales that I've learned has really helped me with that. And what's interesting about you too, and I've always noticed this about you, is that when you speak, you speak so not just fluid, but you have a deliberate method of speaking without being like hard. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does. There's a lot of skills that you learn in terms of tone of voice and word choice and pace that are so important in sales. But obviously, being a trainer, it's a lot of public speaking work that you're doing as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think you've heard through some of the other sales trainers at Universe, everybody was required to be a Toastmaster, which is a great organization for salespeople. I highly recommend it. It's a great, really low cost way to become a better public speaker. So all of that training, both in sales and both in public speaking, has definitely changed the way that I present and the way that I speak to people in front of a camera since I started learning my ums and ahs and weird things I do with my hands. So it's taken a lot of work.
Yeah. That's one of the things that I think I've learned the most from doing a podcast is because at first I didn't have any guests. I didn't have a video on. I was just doing audio and just submitting it through Buzzsprout, and they would put it on LinkedIn and on Apple iTunes or whatever. And the first time I did it, I tried to just wing it and just talk about something. And I listened to myself back and I was like, I probably said 50 million times. I didn't even realize I was doing it. So it's funny that you say that, because I remember at Universe, one of the biggest aspects of sales training was video conferencing. And I kind of feel like you have a leg up on all this now, because that's what you did the majority of your career, was have video conferencing with multiple branches, multiple locations company wide. And now that we're in COVID, this is probably an easier transition for someone like you. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would say that I have been able to be a lot more agile than probably many trainers that were out there used to, stand and deliver training in front of a classroom. Not that I don't love being in front of a classroom and the level of engagement that you can have and the ability to notice a lot more of the dynamics that are happening in the classroom than computer screens. But I will say that that experience has made this transition a lot easier for me. And now I'm just trying to find ways to have more fun with it.
Yeah, I'm sure. And that, like, Johnson & Johnson is a completely different industry than Universal. I mean, in what capacity do you feel?
Well, Johnson Controls, we're obviously still dealing with buildings. Is just a very different type of product. We have the world's largest portfolio of building products, technologies, software, services that really transform the environments where people live and work and learn and play. But it's definitely a different industry than what I was originally in, and different kinds of sales. At sometimes, and we have 3 very different product lines too, in HVAC, fire, and security. That those are very different seller types too, and what they're doing and how they're handling their customers.
Yeah, I totally said Johnson & Johnson. I said the wrong name. I don't know why that came into my head. I really don't. I'm so sorry. Johnson Controls, everyone. Don't comment on my YouTube video. Say I was wrong. I just said I was wrong. Don't read your comments anyway. Not like you comment because I'm a small podcast. But, well, Julia, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate your insight, both in the sales world and how to transition those sales skills into uh, whatever chosen career path that people want. If somebody wanted to connect with you or reach out to you, where would they find you?
I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me under Julia Dekker, two Ks, Dekker, the Dutch spelling. And I'm there.
Awesome.
Connect with me.
Remember, people, LinkedIn, although not a sponsor of my podcast, I'll talk about them until the day I die, because LinkedIn has literally changed the way that I connect with professionals, the way that I connect with salespeople. I wouldn't know people like Bill Wise or Joey Hall or Jeb Blunt without connecting with them on LinkedIn first. I wouldn't be able to stay in touch with Julia and get her extremely valuable insight into this podcast had it not been for LinkedIn. So everybody, thank you so much for listening to Stop Selling. I said it wrong. See, that's karma because I said Johnson & Johnson, and now I'm saying my own podcast name wrong. That's what happens, people. Let me try that again. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening to Stop Interviewing, Start Selling. I'm your host, Bill Meyer. This is Julia Dekker. Julia, thank you so much again, and we will talk to you later.
Thanks, Val.